All right, Emily, thanks so much for being on this podcast. I appreciate it. First off, just give the viewers a little taste of, you know, how you started in the mental health space and kind of your background, and we can go from there.
Sure. Thank you so much for hosting me and bringing me on. How I got started in mental health, well, I would say it goes back all the way to my childhood and being a very caring, empathetic person, loving animals, loving helping people, and just wanting to use that skill in my career. And so I worked in education in various settings, including outdoor education and public education. And I was able to see how people develop and what they need to be their best selves. And I really felt like mental health and supporting people through, their well-being, their whole selves was a passion and a way to help them with success, whatever that looks like for them. So that's how I ended up going and getting my master's in social work and focusing more on mental health as a career.
So tell me a little bit about the work that you do now.
So currently, I have my own private practice as a therapist. I see adolescents, teenagers, and young adults primarily. And I work with them on various issues, goals, hopes that they have, um, symptoms that they might be managing around depression, anxiety, grief, life transitions, relationship issues. It could be really anything that they want to bring to our work together. Um, and then I use many different approaches. I kind of combine um, things because I feel like that's what's helped me in life is to combine things like learning about what's going on in my brain and then, connecting with my body, telling my story, using arts. So I bring in all those different techniques depending on the person and what they want to work on.
hmm You were getting ahead of you were getting ahead of me because what I was going to ask is, since you work with folks in like grief, relationship issues, life transitions, let's dive into two of them. Let's start with the relationship aspect first. What's that all about?
Well, many people find that if they're struggling with mental health issues, um, that affects their relationships. Or maybe a relationship that they have, such as in their family or a partner or even a friend, is causing distress. And so we can use that relationship as a lens to understand what it is that they're going through and how they can build skills, maybe around communicating differently, understanding and empathy, but also understanding themselves in the lens of that relationship. For example, I do have a few people who have come to me because they want to work on intimacy. So, getting closer with someone and feeling fear and vulnerability around opening up with people.
Mm-hmm. Because I've also gotten therapy, and what I've learned in one of the sessions was that, about attachment styles and how attachment styles sort of give a predictor as to how your relationship will turn out. I don't know if you've heard about that or if you've used that.
Yes, I have studied it a bit. I don't consider myself an attachment theory oriented therapist. I do think it's really helpful, and I think sometimes it can be limiting, just like any label that we give ourselves based on um, our past. If we say, oh, my attachment style is this, then that can feel like, oh, well, I can't change that. So I think it's a helpful lens, and it's important to know that like you can shift and change the way that you bond and connect and relate to people, even though your attachment style from the past is still present or it still affects you, if that makes
hmm
sense.
Yeah, it does. So, like, what sorts of modalities do you use for people, who are struggling with relationships?
Wow, that's a great question. I do really enjoy narrative therapy, which is all about telling your story and kind of looking at what the themes and perspectives you have are through your story. And is there a way to see that differently? What is your life story that you want to be? And then how can you move towards that? So just looking at how people talk about the relationship issues, what's important to them, and then what doesn't line up in their lives. I also use dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, um, because there's a component of that called interpersonal effectiveness. And there's a lot of skills within that about how to communicate with your loved ones, with people you care about, things like setting boundaries, things like being able to listen while respecting yourself and them. So I am very interested in teaching people skills. That's kind of my education background coming in of I think people want to learn about what's going on and they want to learn tools.
Hmm. And the second second sort of aspect that I wanted to focus on was sort of like I think it was something to do with like um I think it was like like con aspects of stress. I don't know if that's another thing that you focus on. Is that correct?
Stress?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, stress is everywhere in our world today. I think that we all have different ways of managing stress. And that can be based on patterns that we didn't consciously develop. So, being in therapy is an opportunity to look at, okay, what things stress you out, what things trigger you, and also how do you deal with that now, and what would you like to change about that?
Hmm. Yeah, because there's one thing that I've learned recently. I was watching a video about the polyvagal theory. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes, I've recently been studying it more. I'm very interested as well.
Yeah, like what if you learned from like your learning experience of it?
Well, it's really opened my eyes to the nervous system and a different way of seeing how people operate in the world, um, to understand how we respond to stress and what those patterns are, again, within our bodies and nervous system. I don't think any of us really learn unless you study science and you go into that track like in your field, but in school, we don't really learn about what nervous system activation is, parasympathetic nervous system, which is what we need to go into to be able to relax and restore. So it's just a new way of seeing ourselves for me, and it's very concrete. It's another way to see things that's a little bit more um, a little bit more yeah,
Nuanced?
concrete, left-brained, I guess, because I tend to be more right-brained, like more using art, using stories, using kind of the heart to connect with people, and this is more on the left side of that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so fascinating because I remember like because generally like when you think about stress, it's usually you're stressed or you're not stressed, but there are so many different levels.
Yes, and stress can be a helpful thing. For example, getting stressed out before going to do a presentation is a natural reaction because your body is amping yourself up to go perform. So to expect yourself to not be stressed or to not be, you know, maybe a little bit of anxious before that is maybe not that realistic, but how you work with that, right? How you recognize that and then respond to that is where the power comes from.
Hmm. So do you sort of how do you sort of help folks who are managing, with stress, and all that sorts of stuff? You mentioned transition issues. So how does that sort of overlap, I guess?
Sure. I mean, I think when you go through a transition such as graduating school and going on to another phase of life or becoming a parent or losing someone in your life, um, that can be a big trigger for people. And so those are moments in life where we are tested, and we can see what skills do we have and where can we grow our skills to be more resilient, to know ourselves, to connect with others, and, reach out for support. So I think transitions are just a great opportunity to shift and um, focus on yourself and kind of define who you are at this new phase. It's very exciting. In some ways, you get to reinvent yourself.
Hmm. And just like with the relation piece that I talked about, what sorts of modalities do you use in this instance of like stress and like life transitions?
Sure. I mean, similarly, I think narrative therapy is very helpful for this, as well as mind-body therapies. So I'm currently taking a training in somatic um, regulation, emotion regulation, and skills around, breathing, mindfulness, noticing what's going on in your body is helping you to manage whatever it is that's going on. Um, and then, like I mentioned, dialectical behavioral therapy, as well as traditional cognitive behavioral therapy, those techniques can help people with managing symptoms. So I don't purely use those behavioral therapies because at the end of the day, they don't always get to the root cause of the issue, but they can help a person manage the symptoms they're having in the moment so that they can feel better enough to maybe dig deeper into the root causes and the core issues that are coming up that may have been present for much longer than just that transition time or that relationship issue.
Hmm. And I always ask therapists this on my show. What have you learned from doing this kind of work?
Oh, I've learned a lot. Um, I think most importantly, I've learned, or most strikingly, I've learned about myself. Because I believe that you need to know something to teach something, or when you teach something, you get to know it in a new way. And so, it's very important to me that what I am teaching and supporting people with is also things that I'm doing in my life. And becoming aware of my own needs, my own struggles and challenges, and making sure that those things do not show up in my work, in the sense that affect how I'm responding to someone. And at the same time, bringing that experience in to say, like, this is what I've learned.
Hmm. What have you, I already asked that. My next question is like, if you had to learn something new in terms of a new sort of thing or modality or anything, what in terms of something new, what do you hope to learn? Is there like a new sort of branch that you sort of want to focus on or are curious about that you're like, I'm curious to learn more about this.
Yes, definitely the somatic therapy. As I mentioned, I've been, reading a lot and trying on this training around somatic therapy and emotion regulation. And so I just think there's a lot of power in that, and I think that is somewhat limited in how we traditionally do talk therapy. We don't necessarily talk about our bodies that much. Um, so that, and then I will also say expressive arts. So I love using art as a tool. And again, it's another way to connect with yourself that you don't have to use words, but you can still learn so much by what comes out. So I hope to do some trainings and bring that into my work if my clients are open to it.
Hmm. As the saying goes, a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yes, exactly.
Hmm. Um, who was that sort of mentor in your life when you were, going to become a mental health therapist that you were like, I want to be like this person, I want to be like that person, I want to be like this person.
Mm, it's a great question. Um, I've had many mentors and they've helped me at different points. Um, I struggled a lot with deciding to go into this field. I really doubted whether it was the right path for me. And I remember one great mentor from working in a high school together. And he just said, you're always going to have doubts about what you want to do, but you need to listen to your inner compass. And I had never considered that I had a compass in me,
Hmm.
or what that meant. And so that metaphor really has stuck with me. And I ended up just letting it sort of guide me towards the interest and curiosity I had in the field of mental health. And even though I had doubts and fears and uncertainties about doing this kind of work, it allowed me to just trust that. And then throughout the process of different steps I've taken, I've just had to go back and trust my gut and the compass metaphor to decide, where to go next.
Hmm. That's pretty cool. The compass metaphor. Never thought about that. Yeah, it's awesome. Um, which the reason why I asked that question of a mentor is, which brings me to my last question of like, what tips, advice would you give to those who are studying the mental health space, the work that you're doing? What advice would you give? Tips?
Hmm, great question. Well, in my study of social work, one of the biggest focuses was what draws you personally to this field. We all have personal experiences that kind of guide us to doing what we choose to do. And oh my God, I'm so sorry. A bird just flew into my into the window and my
Into your window? Yeah.
that surprised me. Um, let's see. What was I saying? We all have,
You said all have your mentors, or you all have you were saying something about like your mentors or something. Like my question was, what tips, advice would you give to
yeah.
those who?
Yes. So better understanding yourself and what draws you to the work. And because we all have personal experiences, that's what it was, that kind of inform who we are and what we want to do, and just being really mindful of what those reasons are, and then carrying those with you as you continue through, to help motivate you, because at the end of the day, like, you are the motivator of yourself, and just staying connected to your reason for doing it and your why for doing it, it will be very important.
Mm-hmm. All righty.